Welcome back, viewer, to Chungu cha Jamii. Today we are talking about raising an autistic child. Are you raising an autistic child? What are the challenges? What are the benefits? What are the advantages and disadvantages? Send in your question, your comments across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa, or SMS line is 21144. So before we went on a break, Madam Felicity has mentioned about not isolating this issue to be individualized, to be a parent-child issue, but also to be a family issue, a societal issue. Maybe coming back to you, Madam Felicity, as grandparents and in-laws, because families, looking at a mother and a father, we are married, and the blame games that are there. When you're talking about families now, the grandparents from both sides, the mother's grandparents and the father's grandparents, how do we correlate and bring them together to understand that this particular issue of an autistic child, the spectrum that a child is born with, is not witchcraft, it's not cultism, but rather it's something that we have all agreed that our Creator has allowed it to come, and knowing that when we are united, we can fight and face a lot of challenges rather than pointing fingers at each other. What will be your advice to these particular grandparents as they help their children to bring up this child who is affected by the autism spectrum?
Well, my advice is that, like I said, let's not isolate the family per se, because in the first place, to avoid the breakup between the mother and the father, you see, I know there is a lot of blame game when people find that used to be in the past. You have no idea how bad it was when Andrew was growing up. But people now are understanding that it's not about, and it is not only the mother who remains with the child. I have a lot of families where the mothers have abandoned the child, and now the person that is taking care of the child is the father, and because the father is involved, then this is automatically how the grandmother or perhaps the auntie comes in. So we are saying, let's not isolate this case to an individual marriage on the man and the woman, but let's also get the family and also their neighbors. You've got to make the neighbors understand that this child is within the autism spectrum disorder. So like when we talked about the dietary intervention, the neighbors need to know that this child cannot be fed on perhaps wheat, milk, or even sugary foods and drinks. So if your neighbors understand that, it is very, very important. And I know they help. The neighbors also have a passion to see that their neighbor's child is growing well. So this is not an issue of separating these families, because the majority of them start blaming sikwetu ni kwenu, sikwetu nini. So there are all these cases which I have faced, and because of educating their community about this, it works very, very well.
What would be your parting shot on the same?
Me, Felicity?
Yes.
Right now we are working on Autism Society of Kenya is working on modalities of perhaps being able to raise more funds so that we can still continue with our programs of forming parent support groups, and also telling I would want here to tell the parents that the question of taking the child to school is not what would make their child better. If you are finding that your child is different from perhaps the other one or your neighbor's child. Because now we can tell it is people are not isolated anymore. Um, well, it may not be like when I was growing up, but it is completely different. People are not isolated bringing up their child. They can see that their neighbor's child is of the same age with your child, but the child's milestone, your neighbor's milestones are better than your child. Um, I think I want to say that let's not isolate these families. Uh, and also that we hope to continue with being able to form parent support groups, being able uh, to continue giving people information. And again, I want to say this, like Kenyatta National Hospital have now a unit which is very, very supportive. We have now even the Aga Khan hospital. We have qualified pediatricians who are able to diagnose the child and redirect the child appropriately. So it's not as bad as when Andrew was growing up, because it was really horrible for the parents. I do not want to say what was happening. Andrew was not alone. There were others uh, who were also affected by the spectrum. So the issue here is not as, it is easier said, like you said, than done. It is very difficult to bring up a child within autism spectrum disorder. But it's not as difficult as it was before. I have also, although every morning I get calls from the parents, and you'll find if you Google onto Autism Society of Kenya, the number that comes up is my personal number, and they call me. Even if I don't have credit, I try to borrow so that I can be able to talk to them and tell them that all is not lost. And it does not mean that when you have one boy with autism, the next one will have autism. Because I will give you the case of my own family. Andrew has a brother who came immediately after him, and the boy is brilliant. He's not affected by autism spectrum disorder, so we don't want to isolate the people within autism spectrum disorder. What we can do collectively, and especially our government, has a role to play in this, and so that we can be able to have people who are within the spectrum of autism.
Thank you so much, Madam Felicity, for the insight and for the words of the Autism Society of Kenya as a group that you are doing to help parents with autistic children. Coming back to you, Mr. Benjamin, from what Madam Felicity has shared with us and has told us about the blame games, and I had it wrong when I'm saying that a lot of women are the ones who are left with the children. But from the statistics and also from the Autism Society of Kenya, the data that they have, men are the ones who are left with the children. Because now I'm trying to look at it from that perspective. As a father of this child, your wife has left you. You now have to be with this child and bring him or her up. And now, in the cases of society or parents not wanting anything to do with all this, how is it for such a parent, for such a father, and also in the case scenario of now, they are all involved, because these are two different scenarios and the results will also be greatly different. How is it?
People tend not to understand. And that's why I said it's very important for us to understand the beginning of everything. You know, even for this cup to be made, there was a blueprint. Even for the phone that you're using to be made, there was a blueprint. If you have a very good and expensive phone, but you do not know how to use it, then it is a big problem. And it has no value to you. You know, our Creator gave us a very important treasure called the heart of man. But the problem is that many people do not know how to use their heart. That's why when it comes to the functions of the heart, you know, there is the function of the heart, number one, which is emotion. And normally, people who depend on their emotions and feelings, they are the most terrible and dangerous people to live with. Because everything they do, they look upon their emotions, they respond to whatever comes from their heart, the emotions that come from within them. And that's why now we go to the second level of the functions of the heart, which is reasoning. And that's why we go to school, so that we may get that reasoning capacity. And then from that reasoning capacity, we get to the other point of the matter, and the third point, which is hope. We normally don't get hope from just anyone. We normally get it, mostly it's given by the politicians and the great people, and people are now people are great in the society. But sometimes the reason why you see these people getting separated, it's simply because they were in that point of getting hope, but at some point, it does not work, and then we tend to fall into despair. And that's why we need now the fourth function of the heart, which is very important, and that is the mind. To understand the mind of man, to understand the heart of man, to understand the world of the heart of man. You know, when I look at the Bible, it talks about, in the book of Ecclesiastes, it's a book that people don't like, because first you start with the name Ecclesiastes. But it is written by one man who was very wise. And then he says like this: consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he has made crooked? It's in chapter 7. And then also he speaks again, and then he says, in the day of prosperity, be joyful. But in the day of adversity, also consider, God hath set one over against the other, so that man shall find nothing after him. You know, when things get crooked, when we fall into adversity, we tend not to think about anything to do with God. We start blaming people. So the blame game comes from when we depart from the Creator. And that's why when you get to the Bible, in the book of Jeremiah, it says, my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewn themselves cisterns, broken cisterns, which cannot hold water. So the beginning of every problem, it starts from living away from God. And that's why they cannot understand the world of the heart if they have left God. The blame game started with our foreparents. When Adam was able to, when they left God, and then when God came back to them, everybody was blaming the other. Adam was asked, who did it? The wife that you gave to me, the woman that you gave to me. And the woman, the serpent. You know, the blame game does not start now. It starts from the moment that we leave God. Even now, everybody is like they're having complaints and blames and whatever. But do you think it happens because of the situation?
Let me ask you that question. Do you think it happens because of that, or do you think it's the only way out for a human being to be able to console him or herself when it comes to matter situation?
No.
As you answer me that, I'm being told that you are running out of time. You can also give us your parting shot on the same.
The problem is they left God. So the moment they left God, they got into work. When they get into work, they cause problems. When they cause problem, they also get into another work of trying to solve the problem by themselves. If it doesn't work, now the blame game starts. So for me, I would say, let us return back to the Bible. When we return back to the Bible, we return back to the Creator, and then we can be able to understand even the crooked things, the adversities that come to our life. It is God who has allowed them.
Thank you so much for coming and talking about how to raise an autistic child and giving us the perspective of the world of the heart. Viewer, I hope we can continue this conversation online. Let's interact. Send in your question, your comments across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa. Our SMS line is 21144. Till next time, have a nice time. Goodbye.